Chapter 1. The old theater was a relic of a bygone era, a dusty monument to a time when fear was a shared experience. And the flickering light of the silver screen was the only thing separating the audience from the monsters lurking in the dark. The walls were peeling, the seats were frayed, and the air was thick with the scent of stale popcorn and something more sinister. Fear. It was the perfect setting for the double feature of the night, the Tingler and the Phantom of the Opera. As the patrons filed in, their laughter echoed through the cavernous room, oblivious to the darkness that would soon envelop them. Among them was a woman named Clara, her heart racing with anticipation. She had come alone, drawn by the allure of the macabre, seeking a thrill that would make her feel alive. Little did she know that the true horror was not confined to the screen. The lights dimmed and the projector whirred to life, casting shadows that danced across the walls. The film began, and the audience settled into a tense silence, eyes fixated on the screen. Clara felt a shiver run down her spine as the story unfolded. A tale of a creature that thrived on fear, a creature that could only be seen by those who screamed. It was absurd, ridiculous even, but in that moment, the absurdity felt real, palpable. Suddenly, a shriek pierced the silence, echoing from the back of the theater. Clara's heart stopped as she turned to see a man, his face twisted in terror, pointing at something unseen. "It's coming! The Tingler!" he yelled, his voice cracking. The audience erupted into laughter, dismissing him as a prankster. But Clara's laughter faded as she caught a glimpse of something slithering in the shadows, a dark movement that seemed to pulse with life. "Stop it! You're scaring people!" a woman shouted, her voice trembling. But the man remained fixated, his eyes wide with horror. Clara leaned forward, straining to see what he was seeing. The shadows flickered, and for a moment she thought she saw a shape, long and twisted, like a spine made of shadows. Her breath quickened, and she felt the familiar grip of fear tighten around her heart. The scene on the screen grew more frantic. A character was trapped, suffocated by the very essence of fear itself. The audience gasped and screamed, but Clara felt something different, a strange sensation crawling up her spine, a tingling that left her breathless. She glanced at the man again, his face pale and trembling, and her gut twisted with foreboding. Chapter 2. As the film reached its climax, the man in the back stood up, his eyes wild. "It's real! It's in here with us!" he screamed, and this time, the laughter faded into an uncomfortable silence. Clara's heart raced. Was it just the movie, or was something truly lurking among them? The lights flickered, adding to the disorientation, and the screen flashed images of the Tingler, a grotesque creature writhing in agony. "Everyone scream! It's the only way to fight it!" the man shouted, his voice trembling with desperation. Clara felt her throat tighten. She wanted to scream, but fear held her captive, a vice around her chest. As if on cue, the audience erupted into terrified shrieks, but amidst the chaos, Clara felt an eerie calm wash over her. The screams echoed, bouncing off the walls, building a crescendo that felt almost tangible. Suddenly, the power cut out. Darkness swallowed the theater whole, and the screams morphed into a cacophony of panic. Clara's heart raced as she fumbled in the dark, her fingers brushing against the sticky seat beside her. She could hear the frantic breaths of her fellow audience members, the rustling of clothes, and then an unmistakable sound, a wet, slithering noise creeping closer. "Help! Someone help!" another voice cried out, trembling with fear. Clara's pulse quickened as she clutched the seat's armrest, feeling the sweat on her palms. She could almost feel the creature's breath on her neck, hear the whispers of its dark hunger echoing in her ears. "It's coming for us!" the voice continued, and she knew she had to get out. She stood, her legs trembling beneath her, and started toward the exit. The darkness pressed in around her, thick and suffocating. With each step, she was acutely aware of the presence behind her, an unseen specter that thrived on the terror surrounding her. The slithering grew louder, an insatiable hunger creeping toward her. "Clara, where are you?" a voice called, but the panic drowned out the familiarity. It was a friend, a voice she recognized, but it felt distant, lost in the midst of chaos. She stumbled forward, her foot catching on something cold and slimy, and she fell, her palm scraping against the floor. The darkness swallowed her cries, and the wet, slithering noise grew closer, a mocking reminder of her fear. Chapter 3. Just when she thought she would be consumed by the darkness, the lights flickered back on, revealing the theater's interior in a grotesque tableau. The audience was frozen in place, eyes wide, mouths agape, some still screaming while others were eerily silent. The man's face was pale, his eyes darting around the room in terror. He was the only one who appeared to be aware of the horror that had manifested. Clara struggled to her feet, her heart pounding. She looked around, and her stomach dropped as she saw the truth. The Tingler was real, not just a figment of imagination. It was slithering among the seats, weaving through the terrified patrons like a serpent through grass, its elongated body glistening in the harsh light. The creature was a mass of writhing limbs and jagged teeth, its eyes glowing with a predatory hunger. "Get out! It's feeding on our fear!" the man screamed, but it was too late. The Tingler lunged, its mouth opening wide, revealing rows of sharp teeth as it devoured the closest victim, a woman in the front row, her scream echoing through the theater, a sound that would haunt Clara for the rest of her life. The panic erupted anew, and Clara turned to run. But the creature was everywhere, feeding off the chaos, feeding off the fear that saturated the air. It lunged at another patron, tearing into flesh with a sickening crunch. Blood sprayed, painting the walls in a macabre display, and Clara felt the bile rise in her throat. The screams morphed into a symphony of horror, a concert of death that drowned out the sound of her own heart beating. She stumbled back, her mind racing as she tried to grasp the reality of what was happening. The Tingler was not just a monster on the screen, it was here, feeding on the fear that gripped the audience, and there was no escape. The theater was a trap, a coffin filled with the echoes of terror and the scent of blood. As the creature devoured another victim, Clara felt her legs give way beneath her. She sank to the floor, paralyzed by the horror unfolding around her. The screams faded into silence, replaced by the sickening sound of flesh tearing and bones breaking. The last thing she saw before the darkness engulfed her was the creature, glistening and insatiable, feasting on the remnants of fear that had once filled the theater. The lights flickered once more, and the film continued to roll, the audience now reduced to a macabre feast. The Tingler had claimed its victims, and as Clara's mind slipped into oblivion, she realized the truth. Fear was the monster, and it had always been lurking, waiting for a moment of weakness to strike. The theater, once a place of laughter and thrills, had become a tomb, a testament to the brutal reality of terror. In the end, there was no escape, only the lingering echo of screams that would never fade. The Tingler had feasted, and all that remained was the silence of the grave, a darkness that devoured hope, leaving nothing but despair in its wake.